China's tech giant Huawei is facing a crisis. Its net profit fell 32% in the first half of this year, while total liabilities exceed 700 billion yuan. The company has been called the Evergrande of the tech world. Huawei has long faced overseas accusations, and international sanctions continue to expand. The company has also been involved in a bribery scandal affecting its global business operations. Huawei Investment and Holdings' latest semi-annual report for 2025 shows a slight revenue increase to 427 billion yuan, but net profit fell sharply, down 32% to 37.2 billion yuan compared to the same period last year. Huawei attributed the profit decline to several factors, including higher research and development spending, increased strategic investment, and changes in the external environment. Huawei's executive director Yu Chendong said in an interview that the company spends hundreds of billions of yuan annually on its Harmony operating system alone. The report also shows that Huawei's operating costs grew 9.3%, far outpacing revenue growth of 4%, highlighting increasing cost pressures. Another factor in the profit decline was a significant loss of 5.8 billion yuan in asset value. This resulted from market fluctuations affecting certain financial instruments and investments held by Huawei. Rising supply chain costs and high internal management expenses further squeeze the company's profit margin. Huawei's cloud business is also facing unprecedented challenges. According to the latest market data, Huawei Cloud holds only an 18% share of China's cloud services market, well behind market leader Alibaba Cloud at 33%. Its profitability remains under question. Industry sources say Huawei Cloud fell into a loss in 2024, making profitability its primary strategic goal this year. However, the company has not disclosed any loss figures. In late March, after Huawei released its 2024 annual report, media personality Lao Jie criticized the data for being overly polished, calling Huawei's cloud computing business a rhetorical bubble. Lao Jie noted that Huawei reported 38.5 billion yuan in cloud computing revenue for 2024, up 8.5% year-on-year. This was the slowest growing segment apart from ICT infrastructure, which grew 4.9%. Huawei also stated that including revenue from internal divisions using its cloud services would bring total cloud revenue to 68.8 billion yuan. Lao Jie said this means about 45% of Huawei's global cloud infrastructure is used internally. Nearly half of Huawei Cloud's revenue comes from self-produced and self-sold services. Despite this, Huawei's report claimed that 95% of China's top 30 automakers, 90% of the top 50 e-commerce companies, 90% of the top 50 gaming companies, 90% of China's internet companies, and 80% of retail companies have chosen Huawei Cloud. Lao Jie questioned why, despite these claims of near monopoly, Huawei Cloud's external revenue is only 38.5 billion yuan. According to the China Academy of Information and Communications Technology, China's cloud computing market is set to exceed 800 billion yuan by 2024. In response to this challenge, Huawei Cloud recently launched a large-scale organizational restructuring. CEO Zhang Ping'an announced that key teams, including the product, public cloud services, and R&D departments, will be consolidated with a focus on AI. The adjustment is expected to affect the work arrangements of over 1,000 employees. Since June, Huawei's cloud official website has frequently posted announcements about products being discontinued or withdrawn, with more than 20 offerings exiting early. In recent years, Huawei Cloud attempted a wide net approach covering enterprise email, domain registration, cloud monitoring, and other basic services. Most of these businesses remained unprofitable and lacked strong synergy with the group's core Ascend computing platform. Huawei Cloud also faces technical scrutiny. In July, research team Honest AGI publicly accused Huawei Penghu of allegedly copying Alibaba's Tongyi Tianwen large language model. Huawei firmly denied the plagiarism claims, but admitted that some basic component code referenced industry open source practices, sparking broad industry discussion. Reuters reported that Huawei launched its first-generation Penghu model in 2021, entering the large model field early, but it has since been viewed as lagging behind competitors. Against the backdrop of the US-China trade war, Huawei faces serious allegations in overseas markets, including sharing intelligence with governments, participating in cyber attacks, violating US sanctions on Iran, and maintaining overly close ties with the Chinese government and military. The US imposed comprehensive sanctions on Huawei in 2019, strictly limiting its collaboration with American companies. In 2022, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, banned Huawei equipment from sales or import in the US, citing national security. Huawei has long been questioned due to founder Ren Zhengfei's military background and connections. As China actively promotes 5G networks, the US has consistently urged blocking Huawei and Chinese telecom company ZTE from using American or allied products. US sanctions severely restricted Huawei's global chip access and hindered its expansion in 5G network deployment. In 2020, Huawei outsourced production of the 5nm Kirin 9000 chip to TSMC. Unexpectedly, Huawei was added to the US entity list. In September 2020, the US required any chip foundries using American equipment or technology to cut off supply, forcing TSMC to halt production. After Kirin 9000 inventory ran out, Huawei's smartphone business struggled, temporarily relying on Qualcomm's 4G chips. In 2023, Huawei launched the Kirin 9000S using SMIC's 7nm process, but yields were low, cost high, and US scrutiny remained. In May 2025, Huawei unveiled the Harmony personal computer, reportedly equipped with the 5nm Kirin X90 chip, its first Harmony PC after 5 years of development. Internal sources say Huawei has started 3nm chip research, with tape-out expected in 2026. Additionally, since Chinese firms cannot access NVIDIA's high-end chips, Huawei has begun delivering Cloud Matrix 384 AI chips clusters to domestic clients. Cloud Matrix connects 384 AI processors to provide computing power for AI model development and services. Cloud Matrix 384 uses Huawei Ascend 910C chips, which underperform compared with NVIDIA's GB200 processors. Huawei compensates by connecting more chips through its supernodes, linking all processors with fiber optics to boost overall cluster performance. Industry experts point out two main weaknesses compared with NVIDIA products. First, using more chips increases Cloud Matrix 384's energy consumption, raising electricity costs. It reportedly consumes 3.9 times the power of NVIDIA's GB200 NVL72, and its per-watt AI performance is poor. Total system power, including network and storage, is about 559 kilowatts, compared with 145 kilowatts for the NVL72. NVIDIA's solution is 2.3 times more energy efficient. Second, Huawei's software requires more maintenance by experienced engineers compared to NVIDIA's CUDA platform, resulting in operating labor costs 3 to 5 times higher. Industry insiders say Cloud Matrix 384 is priced around 60 million yuan per set, about $8.2 million USD, depending on the contract. By comparison, analysts estimate NVIDIA's NVL72 at roughly $3 million USD. Strictly speaking, Huawei's AI chip clusters are not fully self-developed and incorporate foreign technology and products. Tom's Hardware reported that according to SemiAnalysis, although SMIC can manufacture Ascend 910C computing chips, most of the Ascend 910C chips Huawei uses are outsourced by TSMC through third-party entities such as SoftGo Technologies. This allows Huawei to bypass US restrictions and obtain chips. On January 15 this year, the US Department of Commerce added over 20 Chinese companies to its export control list, including chip design company SoftGo Technologies. The US accused SoftGo of helping Huawei bypass sanctions, noting that chip found in Huawei's Ascend AI 910B multi-chip AI system match those ordered by SoftGo from TSMC. Additionally, the Ascend 910C uses HBM2E memory, most of which is procured from Samsung through another agent, Co-Asia Electronics. US economist David Huang analyzed that the export restrictions on Huawei essentially aim to prevent its computing power from being used for Chinese military intelligence and weapons simulations. The US has primarily tightened restrictions on high-end GPU exports, limiting China's access to NVIDIA's A100, H100 series. Although Huawei has itself developed Ascend 910B, 910C chips and the MindSpore framework, their technology and efficiency lag behind. Huawei can only manage to substitute in some scenarios through multi-chip packaging and system optimization. The scope of international sanctions against Huawei continues to expand. India, Vietnam, Japan, members of the Five Eyes Alliance, and 10 EU countries have also imposed various degrees of bans or restrictions on Huawei products, significantly impacting its global business operations. David Huang also cautioned foreign users about the security risk of using Huawei and other Chinese AI cloud services, highlighting concerns over data sovereignty and intelligence risks. According to China's national intelligence law, businesses are required to cooperate with national intelligence work, meaning that commercial cloud data may be accessed by military and intelligence systems. Other security concerns include cross-border data compliance. Due to strict data reviews in China, foreign users must verify whether their data could be classified as important data. Additionally, China's AI models and computing platforms may be repurposed for military use, such as image recognition models being used for both commercial security and battlefield surveillance. David Huang pointed out that China's Ascend Cloud Matrix ecosystem remains unstable, potentially subject to sanctions or stagnation in updates. Huawei has been accused by the United States Army War College of being known for bribing and trapping clients. This year, the company faced a credibility crisis in Europe due to bribery cases. On March 13 this year, as part of an investigation into Huawei's lobbying case, Belgian police raided over 20 locations, including Huawei's EU headquarters in Brussels, and detained several individuals for questioning. In May, the identities of 5 current members of the European Parliament allegedly involved in Huawei's lobbying case were revealed. Belgium's federal prosecutor formally requested the European Parliament to lift their judicial immunity for a deeper investigation. These parliamentarians are accused of accepting large sums of money, luxury travel arrangements, and football match tickets from Huawei in exchange for supporting favorable policies for the company. This new incident not only adds a risk to Huawei's operations in Europe, but also exposes the tip of the iceberg in Chinese companies' commercial bribery abroad. Debt is another significant risk for Huawei. By the end of June this year, the company's total liabilities had risen to 712 billion yuan, with a debt-to-asset ratio of 57%. From 2018 to 2022, Huawei's total liabilities were 432.7 billion yuan in 2018, 563.3 billion yuan in 2019, 546.3 billion yuan in 2020, 568.2 billion yuan in 2021, and 626.6 billion yuan in 2022. By the third quarter of 2023, Huawei's total liabilities had surpassed 700 billion yuan. By the end of June 2023, they had climbed to 712 billion yuan. In recent 2025 Fortune China Tech 50 ranking, Huawei investment and holding topped the list. However, the news of Huawei's 700 billion yuan debt has once again led many to compare it to the Evergrande of the tech world. Once a leader in China's real estate market, Evergrande Group went public in Hong Kong in November 2009, reaching a market value of $9 billion, setting the record for the highest market value for a private real estate developer in China at that time. During its peak, Evergrande ranked number 1 in China's real estate sales, particularly in 2016, 2019, and 2020. When it reached its sales peak, however, Evergrande collapsed due to a debt crisis. Initially, Evergrande funded its real estate development by taking on massive debt, with a total debt amounting to about $300 billion. But in 2020, the Chinese government tightened regulations on the real estate market to curb overheating and prevent financial risk, leading to Evergrande's debt problems, triggering the debt crisis in China's property sector. According to Evergrande's Group 2022 annual report, as of December 31, 2022, the company's total liabilities reached 2.4 trillion yuan, setting the highest loss record for a Chinese company. In August 2023, the group filed for bankruptcy protection in the U.S. Manhattan Bankruptcy Court and planned to hold a debt restructuring vote in late September, though the meeting was not held as scheduled. In early September 2023, Chinese authorities took compulsory measures against Evergrande's founder Xu Jiaying and other core company personnel. On January 29, 2024, the Hong Kong High Court ordered the immediate liquidation of China Evergrande Group. On August 25th, 2025, after an 18-month suspension, Evergrande officially delisted from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. In comparing Huawei to Evergrande, some Chinese bloggers defended Huawei's debt, claiming that by the end of third quarter 2023, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China's total liabilities has surpassed 40 trillion yuan, equivalent to 17 times Evergrande's total liabilities. Yet they asked, could it be the next Evergrande? The vlogger argued that ICBC is likely the safest company in China. The article claims that Huawei's debt exceeding 700 billion yuan is not a significant concern. Despite Huawei's growing total liability, its debt ratio has not significantly increased, and in fact, it has decreased, suggesting that Huawei's debt is still under control. However, the blogger admitted that if Huawei's debt continues to rise and one day people stop buying Huawei phones or cars, the company could face serious troubles. Chinese issues expert Yue Shan pointed out that this vlogger unwittingly revealed that institutions like ICBC and Huawei are actually supported by the Chinese government, using public funds to back them. Without state backing, such debts would have caused them to collapse long ago. This is why the Chinese government promotes nationalism, advocates patriotism, and encourages little pinks to buy Huawei products. On the Zhihu platform, users discussed whether Huawei had become too big to fail. One user asked why, after countless companies in China have gone bankrupt, Huawei couldn't fail. The answer, they argued, is that Huawei's collapse would directly impact the employees in related industries. Huawei employs 200,000 people, with nearly half in research and development. If Huawei collapsed, these workers would be out of jobs. However, few companies can offer similar or competitive salaries to Huawei. If Huawei collapses, its executives may start new companies with some core personnel, and many middle and lower level employees would enter the job market, competing for positions. This could disrupt the entire telecommunications, electronics, and internet sectors. Another user noted that given Huawei's achievements, it would take at least a dozen companies in different sectors to fill its shoes, and many of these companies would need several more years to catch up to Huawei's current level. Some domestic companies cannot even compete in certain fields with no viable alternatives. But some users also argue that nothing is too big to fail, like the Soviet Union, which was also powerful, but it still eventually collapsed.